What is up, ladies and gentlemen of the Online Jamly? Welcome to another special interview episode of the QUAICast Podcast, a Jamiroquai podcast by the Jamly for the Jamly. I have been recently wanting to do some interviews with some prominent members of the Jamly on the online sense and in the real life sense. And for regular listeners here on the QUAICast Podcast, you might have heard the recent episode I did with Nautic, who is a lovely moderator over on the fledgling new official Jamiroquai Discord server called, of course, JK Hat. And today I'm joined by one of the most prominent and one of my oldest friends of the Online Jamly, who has been literally there since day one before the stagnation of social media overtook all of us and separated us like some type of digital Hunger Games. Her name is MsP, and she actually is created an amazing Facebook group, a private Facebook group, at least during the last album cycle of Jamiroquai, so members of the Jamly can come together and discuss everything about their favorite band of Jamiroquai, now in its 30th year of creation. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Jan, or otherwise known as Mrs. P of the Online Jamly.
Hi, Brent. Thanks for inviting me along to your show.
Well, it's lovely to have you here in the QUAICast. I couldn't think of any more lovely, fortunate member of the Jamly that I would love to have here on the show. But let me get into my questions here in this interview on the QUAICast. Now, I know we've known each other for a very long time, the Jamly, and have recently finally met each other upon you graciously hosting me during my recent week-long trip there in England during Victoria's Festival Week of 2023. Where was the first place you contributed in the Online Jamly during the early days of the fan base?
Well, I always considered myself quite a newbie onto the scene because I think it was 2003 when I first got a computer and I first went online. And I was thinking, okay, I'm going to look for these people, my tribe. And I found the Online Jamly community. And I always felt in awe of all those people like the David Rose and the Ericas, and the Nicks and the Micahs who'd, been around on the scene for such a long time. And I always felt such a newbie. And I think now, now we're in, I'm in my 20th year of being part of the Jamily. So I think I've earned my stripes. And the first community I joined was JTalk, which was the official site of Jamiroquai. And it was great fun. I think it was just so much randomness, but I found all these people who love the same music as me. And I found you, Brent. And as you say, we met this year for the first time, and that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was an amazing time during the early days of Jamiroquai, especially in the Online Jamly. I mean, the early ecosystem from the early days of Jamline all the way up to the real first dabbles of members of the Jamly into creating their own fan sites, and of course the post forums where we all congregated at least up to the early 2000s during the AFO era, and then from there on it was a pretty much a gold rush for the Jamly. But this leads me into my next question for you, Jan. Jamiroquai does have one of the most long-standing, endearing fan bases, or known as a Jamly in commoner terms. In all popular music, what do you think is the one thing about Jamiroquai and their music that keeps them constantly coming back to being so relevant in the modern world of music?
The message continues to be relevant, doesn't it? I think if you listen to what the band were singing and trying to promote in the early days, emergency on planet Earth. Look at what's happening across the world now. We've literally got an emergency on planet Earth. The music doesn't date. The message doesn't date. I don't think with more recent, especially sort of the last album, we don't have that such a political message. I think the last big standout for me was "Don't Give Hate a Chance." I think that there was a strong message in there. I really wanted that to go to number one. I even bought my mum a copy of that because I was like, yeah, buy my mum a copy is going to make it go to number one. I don't think it did, but this is what Jamiroquai were always about. That strong message. You still see, and I jumped on the Discord server, and you still see it. It's still like 17-year-olds jumping on, loving Jamiroquai, and that's amazing. And it's because there is still that message in the music that people want to hear.
Yeah, it's pretty bewildering how many young generations have just absolutely grasped onto the music of Jamiroquai over the last, I want to say, yeah, like you beautifully put over the last like 10 years. And it usually isn't of a musical discovery kind of origin. It's kind of, they're coming off of the meme culture. They grasp onto something that's mainstream, and they go from the meme culture to the music to the message. And it's that kind of pattern. It's a little bit stunted, but we'll take what we can take when it comes to promotions with Jamiroquai. And this leads me into my next question, which ironically is about social media. Social media has always been a major part of the overall music fan community in the online space. What social platforms do you use most or follow in keeping up with the latest news and happenings with Jamiroquai over the years?
Okay, so I think as I mentioned, I first went on to JTalk, which was a website with this very outdated interface where that was the forum side of it. From there, we kind of then MySpace came about, then Facebook, and we've now got Instagram. I must admit that I don't follow things like I used to. I don't have the time in my life now. But what I do is follow you, Brent. And I know that I follow you on Instagram, and I know that if I need to know anything, all I need to do is look at your page to know what's going on. But I think social media has been has been the way for people across the world to connect. And I think back to, it was 2003 that I joined the online community, or it might have been 2002 actually. But I met people across the world that I would never have ever met in my life if we hadn't had a platform to come together and talk about this music. And you don't have to have things in common. We don't need to be doing the same jobs, etc. But we share the same love of music. It's been, I think social media is amazing, and it continues to be amazing and a great platform for promoting the band.
Yeah, I completely feel you on that, Jan. It's been Social media is always been to me a bit of a double-edged sword, a bit of a sword of Damocles. The most reputational thing that happens with social media, at least cohesively for me, at least in a fan community aspect, is a lot of negative, negative, negative. But you've got to roll with the punches. You've got to go with what's thrown at you. And I still believe that social media can build communities. Many of us in the family have shown that you can build communities. It can be on different fronts, different platforms, but social media is a multi-pronged social media device that we need to be using for good rather than evil. And, through all that animosity, you can find a lot of good people and a lot of good conversations. But this leads me into my next question for you. In the sense of Facebook, you were very instrumental in the creation of what I deem one of the most important online hubs of the online Jamly, the Jamly Facebook group, with over 8,000 members and counting. What was the animus of its creation, and what do you think has evolved on Facebook since its inception?
Okay, so over the years, I tried creating different websites. I think I had, like a Jamiroquai dating website that I only had about 5 members, so it didn't really work very well. Women Against War, I think I had about 3 members there. I had, I can't remember, maybe another couple of things as well. But there were always these other big sites that you had, like the, what's it called, Jamiroquai. Obviously, Funkin is always going to be the number one site. But back when they were just about to release Automaton, there was nowhere to talk. It was like, I want to talk about this music coming out, and I want to be able to talk to the other fans, and I've got no home to go to. There's nowhere. So I just set up a Facebook group, and then just started adding all of the sort of people I was close to. And that sort of morphed into this, as you say now, it's a group that's got 8,000 members. And I think the timing was just right. Managing that site takes a lot of effort, and I kind of decided to retire from it about 5 years ago. I think we got to about 3 or 4,000 members, and I thought my job is done. I've got more than 3 members on this website. So, but I think the timing was just right, and people needed somewhere to come and talk. And Facebook is it's an easy platform to use. So as I say, it was just the timing was right. And I'm really proud of where that got to as well, and that's still going today. And hopefully it's a nice community as well, where people can just be I can't remember what the bio says, but I do hope it says just be nice to each other and just accept everyone for who they are.
Yeah, I feel you on that, Jan. I myself, have done the same type of community building in social media. Mostly in my case, it was on Reddit, which doesn't have the best of reputations. But I know that feeling of creating a space for a large swath of music fans to come and meet, to be accepted, and to talk about whatever they want to talk about. In the case of Reddit, when I was moderating our Jamiroquai on Reddit, I started on our Jamiroquai, I want to say about probably 6, 7 years ago. Totally bare bones subreddit, lots of reposts, nothing really new being posted there. And then I talked to the site owner, a guy named Zach Taska. I was like, "Hey, can I moderate this subreddit? Make this something." And in the span of an ungodly amount of posting and summary posts and videos and everything that comes with being a contributory juggernaut that I am, I took that subreddit of only about 135 members, and in the span of 5 years, it's now over 3,000 members. And the same thing with YouTube. I started on YouTube about 8 years ago at the height of the automaton era, just like you did when it came to creating the Jamley Facebook group. I am now over 1,200 subscribers on YouTube. So community building online may take a long time, but the fruits of those labors are invaluable because you're doing a two pronged achievement here. You are becoming a much better fan and a leader, and you're creating a space for people to feel comfortable to tell their friends to come to there and to share and contribute as well. So it's a win-win situation, at least from my point of view, and I'm sure you agree. This moves on to my next question. We all know that the ninth Jamiroquai album is coming very soon. Speculatively, it's somewhere between 2024 and 2025. What would you like to see the new album go musically and conceptually?
Oh, that's a really hard question. Um, I'd say bring back the horns because we always say that, don't we? But I just want to hear a bit more of Jay taking a risk again, maybe, because I don't think the latest albums have been risky. Take a punt, does it matter if you don't get the sales you're looking for? Do it from the heart. It's, I, I loved Automaton and I savoured it. I went to the album launch gig in London and I didn't listen to the whole album until I got back to my hotel room. And that feeling of unboxing something that's absolutely amazing. And that album it was polished, it was good. I want to hear something even better next time. I want to open it and it's like this box of treats. It's just wows me from the very start. So, I'm not one for, I'm not, I don't know, people used to talk about like, or like sort of technical stuff over the years on sites. That always used to fry my brain. It was like, I just know what makes me happy and I want the next album to really, really make me happy and make me dance. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely feel you on that, Jan. I really want. I mean, Automaton to me was a return to that return of formness that Jamiroquai had back in 2001 with the Funk Odyssey. It was Jamiroquai embracing technology, going a completely different direction. There were dabbles, there were little incidents of this, prerequisite to AFO synchronize. We saw Jamiroquai dabbling into EDM. We saw them dabbling into technology or technological influence into the music. And for me personally, I would love to see them do a collaborative album effort. I want to see them hook up with old artists that they're influenced by and new artists that are burgeoning on the scene. Tyler the Creator, Roy Ayers, Stevie Wonder, Curtis Mayfield are just a few names that come to mind. But I do agree with you on the lyrical end that they need to take some more chances. They need to talk about what's happening in the world. They need to masterfully craft a bunch of songs that imbuify what's going on in the world and continue to raise that limelight of awareness and concern about what's happening in the world, or the constant threats against the onslaught of humanity, and in cases of planet against humanity, or humanity against humanity, or humanity against planet. There's so many different crazy directions they can go, but we've learned with Jamiroquai to expect the unexpected. And this leads me on to my next question. Aside from recently attending Jamiroquai's headlining performance at Portsmouth, England, England at Victoria's Festival 2023. What was your last favorite Jamiroquai gig that you personally attended?
Oh, do you know what? You never shared these questions with me, did you? And I was really hoping you'd ask something like this. Um, it was 31st of March, 2017, wasn't it? When they released Ultimatum. And so that was I can't even remember what the name of the club was now in London, somewhere in Camden. But that gig was just amazing. The energy, and there was a moment when people were clapping so much. Jay just looked like his breath was taken away by it, by that. People just welcoming him back. And just that whole gig from the moment like the opening bars sounded to like the final bit. I can't remember if it was Mr. Moon was the last song. That energy and seeing Erica flip out to Cosmic Girl and then me trying to like hold up my little sign that said Jamura Fan 2000 that I'd made on my computer. Um, just so that, and I was trying to get a picture with this floppy bit of paper with you on it, but it was just such fun. It was just the most amazing energy. That set list was amazing. It was great to hear some of the songs coming in from the new album. It's up there with one of my all-time favorite gigs.
Yes, I remember that part, yeah. I remember there were pictures you sent from I believe that gig was at the Roundhouse, if I remember correctly. It was a Roundhouse, and you were standing there with the jubilant crowd, and Jay's wearing all black, which he doesn't usually do. He's usually wearing like a Adidas tracksuit or pair of like track pants. But you were standing there like creviced in the middle of that crowd, trying to hold up your little sign saying Jamaica Fan 2000 that was covered in Buffalo Man. So that was just great memories. But this leads me into my next question. Much like me, we both are old fans of the Jamley that are really the OJs. And I'm not talking about the OJs choral group. I'm talking about the old Jamley. It's an acronym I created recently. If you were to meet a new member of the Jamley, what advice would you impart upon them about the fan base of Jamiroquai and their music?
Oh, the OJs. I was actually with you when you said that to JK that the original Jamley are called the OJs, and he looked like he liked it. I think he'll be calling us the OJs too. I would say, because when I joined, I was pretty kind of in awe of all of these people who were like, who'd been around forever, and as I said before, so the likes of David Rowe and Erica. I mean, Erica's story is amazing. If you can get her on for an interview, or David Rowe as well. But I would say don't be don't be in awe of these people. Everyone, I hate the word newbie. So, you're not a newbie. Just come in and welcome to the world of Jamley and love this music as much as everyone else does. And I think the amazing thing is that, that age doesn't matter. It transcends everything when you're in the Jamley because you're all loving the same thing, which is the music. So dig into the history, get to know the older fans, learn about them, watch all of Brent's videos, given all the history. And I think how many videos have you done, Brent? About 7 in a series. But just enjoy it, enjoy the ride, and don't feel overwhelmed by these people who have been around for years. Just join in the conversations and have fun.
Yeah, I completely feel you on that, Jen. I mean, when I joined the Jamley back in the late Mesozoic period of human history, of course I'm being facetious, but back in the mid to late 90s, a lot of us people who are music fans, we're kind of dropped in the basket of like nerds, like creeps and people like that. But, you break out of that shyness chrysalis and you meet other people and you get to know people and it turns into more of a humanistic process than an actual music appreciation process, at least in my opinion. So I mean, it's part of like human development, but in this case, it's musical appreciational development, where you're learning all the ebbs and flows of what you like and what you don't like, what people are like, what people aren't like, and you go from there. And I find it an invaluable experience for anybody to join the Jamley, to just enjoy the music and meet other like-minded people and find some commonality in the midst of all of that that great inclusion, and inclusion is important and key when it comes to any kind of musical fan base. This leads me into my next question. This is going to be a really short form question, but what is your favorite Jamiroquai album and song?
Okay, I'm gonna go for. Oh no, I hate this question. Um, okay. Oh God, it's me. I'm just thinking here. You can cut this and edit it anyway, can't you? And shrink down my answer. Okay, I'm gonna go for Return of the Space Cowboy and Mr. Moon.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that, Jan. I have been one of those, like, originally when I got into Jamiroquai a long time ago, I was a flip flopper. I was like, oh, I like this song, and then I like that song, and then it went from construct of an album of a song to an album. And well, for me, I am a bit of a purist, and of all 8 albums that Jamiroquai has released over the last 30 years, I'm going to go with Return to Space Cowboy. That, to me, is their magnus opus. That was, to me, a mixture of what their early activistical type of environmentalism in the early days of Mercy on Planet Earth, and then they moved on to one of the most crazy creative pivots I've ever seen with Jamiroquai's album Topicality. They go from Mercy on Planet Earth, which was all about humanity's effects on planet Earth, to humanity upon humanity, which I think was a daring move, but was, part of their activisional side that they kind of tapered off in their later albums, especially when they got, with the hit Pay Dirt with Traveling Out Moving. It's like all the social awareness went out the window when the cars and the money started rolling in, and the privilege and the flying around the world and having a enduring fan base. It kind of fell on the wayside. And leading back to an old question I had early in this interview, I do wish Jamiroquai would go back to their activisional side, their activist side, looking at the world. But I think Return to Space Cowboy is their most important album. As for songs, I'm going to go with Just Another Story. That song, to me, is absolutely outstanding, and not to mention probably the most autobiographical song written by J.K. Because if you read those lyrics, it's literally the first 20 years of his life illustrated in lyric, with a little bit of social awareness, with a little bit of really witty lyrical swerves about drugs, about urban decay, just intermixed with his life. So amazing, amazing song. And this leads me into my final question, surprisingly, of this interview. All right, and finally, for the last 2 years, the Jamley and the band have been celebrating the 30th anniversary of Jamiroquai, the formation of the band Jamiroquai. 1992, of course, they signed to Acid Jazz Records. So this has kind of been a dual year of the 30th anniversary of the formation of Jamiroquai. What do you think will be the musical legacy of Jamiroquai?
Okay, sorry, I'm thinking here. It's because I don't think the band and the music have ever. If we fast forward, let's say we fast forward 15 years, 20 years, there's going to be a point when people are like, "There's a message here. This was coming through." There is. They weren't singing about, but they did sing about walking his dog in one, didn't it? It was that lifeline, but there's the message that's coming through strongly in the music, and that's the legacy the band will leave, and Jay's always, there with his hats and his message, and even the name of the band. There's always been that strong message throughout. And I would hope, especially with the early album, it is around what's happening to the earth. And there's no greater medium than music, is there, to put out a message to the world of what's happening. And I know Jay has over the years tried it with different ways as well, but he's got this powerful platform to talk from. So I think the legacy, there's going to be a legacy. It's interesting on Discord to hear kids saying on there, they've heard through their parents, they've heard the music and they're coming onto the scene. And let's not forget, there is the fact that there is the message in the music, but they're also pretty damn good as well. It's the best music out there, and that's why we're fans. Thank you, Brent.
Yeah, I'm with you completely on that, Jan. The legacy of Jamiroquai is going to be one of activism, one of awareness, one of stop what you're doing, stop with all the bewilderments of technology, the bewilderments of yourself, the bewilderments of the ego, and look at what's happening around you. And I do I'm very embracing and I'm very deeper in probably my thought of the legacy of Jamiroquai, but like you masterfully put in your comment, I do think Jamiroquai has got an amazing musical legacy that will keep resounding for years and years and years. Not with the turmoils of humanity continuing to have them people go back to the music of Jamiroquai, but like I said, Jamiroquai is one of those pop acts who have always been ahead of the curve and always been self-aware of what's happening in the world, even when the awareness of what was happening in the world was not there, or the people in positions of power did not want us to know about what's happening in the world. So, but yeah, that's the end of this episode, this interview episode with my friend Jan here. But I would like to give an amazing thank you to Jan, Mrs. P of the Online Jamly, for taking the time out to be here on the QUAICast podcast on this special interview episode. And I couldn't. I mean, this has been one of the best interviews I've done, and I've only done 2 interviews, but I've done many interviews in the past. But I do agree, at least in the sense of Jamiroquai's and fan base and the QUAICast, this is one of the best interviews I've done in a while. So thank you, Jan, for being here on the QUAICast.
Thanks for having me, Brent. It's been an absolute pleasure. And keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job for the community, and we all adore you as well. And it was an absolute pleasure to meet you in real life and have a sing and a dance with you as well. So I'm going to go and finish off cooking my roast chicken now. But thanks again for having me, and I'll speak to you soon, Brent. Thank you.
Thank you again for being on the QUAICast, Jan. I couldn't have done this episode without you. I always wanted to do an interview with you, and you have been nothing but a darling. But thank you again, my social media mom, for being here on the QUAICast. By the way, I hope everyone in the Online Jamly enjoyed this special interview episode of the QUAICast podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to follow the QUAICast podcast over on podcasters on Spotify, and of course the Spotify music streaming platform. And I'm hopefully going to be doing a few more interviews here on the QUAICast podcast in the near to distant future, maybe with some band members of Jamiroquai when their schedules are open. But I will thoroughly endeavor to keep bringing you all the latest Jamiroquai news here in this audio sense of the QUAICast podcast. But as always, this is Jamirofan 2000. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you again really soon with more Jamiroquai related content here on the QUAICast, a Jamiroquai podcast by the Jamly for the Jammy. Thanks again, everyone, and take care.